This is Irene Sanpietro, and you are listening to UC3P.
Welcome to UC3P, our eponymously named podcast on policy, politics, and current affairs. My name is David Raban, and I'm the production manager for what we like to call the main page. Today, we're back with our regular interview series. We're going to talk with Evan Smith, a public interest attorney who works in rural Appalachia. He's the Director of Advocacy for AppalReD, a nonprofit that gives free civil legal services to people who can't afford them. He previously clerked on the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals and worked with the Appalachian Citizens Law Center. I spoke with Evan over the summer. We talked about a bunch of things, including what it's like to work in rural America, the legal issues people face in that part of the country, and what we can do to help. Before we get into the interview, I'd like to mention 3 things. First, in full disclosure, I interned at AppalReD for 10 weeks this summer. I received money for that work through the University of Chicago Law School and the Rural Summer Legal Corps, which is itself a collaboration between the Legal Services Corporation and Equal Justice Works. Second, I absolutely loved my time there. Finally, we recorded this interview on a Friday evening, and you can probably hear some exhaustion in my voice. It was my last day at AppalReD, and we had been working hard for weeks, putting the finishing touches on some very important briefs. In any case, I've learned my lesson. Have 2 cups of coffee before interviews. Now, without further ado, here's public interest attorney Evan Smith. Welcome, UC3P listeners. This is David Raban. I'm really excited to bring to you today Evan Smith, who's the Director of Advocacy at AppalReD, which is the Appalachian Research and Defense Fund of Kentucky. Welcome, and thank you for being with us today, Evan.
Oh, thank you for having me, David.
This is really exciting. I just got off working a 10-week internship with you all, and I wanted to ask, what's it like to be working in the public interest space?
Well, David, thank you very much for spending your time with us. And a lot of my friends from law school and other friends, they work at large law firms or other places more in the kind of traditional profit-oriented sector. And in a lot of ways, there's a lot of similarities to what I and they do in their day, in the sense that we both do legal research. We both try to analyze issues and provide our clients with the best advice that we can. Probably the biggest difference is that I work at a mission-oriented organization, so the goal is not to make profit. The goal in our case is to handle the issues of poverty in Appalachian Kentucky through legal means. So that means that we are interacting with our clients, but we're also at the same time trying to think about more broadly what can we do for the mission-based reason of our organization. One of the other big differences in for-profit law practice and what we do here at Legal Aid is because our clients don't pay us, a lot of times our relationships with our clients can in some ways be more friendly than a lot of profit-oriented firms. I mean, if it takes us a long time to come to the right solution for one of our clients don't have to see that bill. So we don't have to have that difficult conversation with clients when you have to ask them to pay you a bill.
And an added layer on top of all this is that you work in a very rural area. What's it like to have this interaction between the public interest work that you're doing and then also having the overlay of being in an area that's not just very poor, but it's not very urban?
Yeah, we're here in eastern and southern Kentucky. It's, very rural area, really, by any definition. I mean, for example, our main office of AppalReD here in Prestonsburg, we have about 5,000 people in Prestonsburg, and this is considered a relatively big town for the area. So yes, in that sense, our clients often live significant distances away. We have clients that live nearly 2 hours away from our closest office, and we're the only place that they can go to get free legal assistance. So geography and distance is often a challenge that we have to confront with our work, and so we have to think about how can we minimize the difficulties that places on our clients by doing as much as we can over the phone, over the internet, and also knowing that many of our clients don't have reliable high-speed internet and things like that. So working in rural America does present some additional challenges. There's also, though, a lot of great things about it. The community and the connection that we have with our clients and often so many other people that we interact with, both, from the judges, everyone else. There is a lot of camaraderie there. And so I love working in a rural area, but it's certainly very different than doing so in an urban space.
And part of what makes it different are the issues that you face on a daily basis can be different. For example, you worked for many, many years, and you've still been working for many years on coal worker issues, black lung issues. The medical term for that is pneumoconiosis. So what is it that kind of drew you to that kind of work? I know that you've been working on it for many years. What initially drew you to it, and why do you stick with it?
I grew up in the coal fields of eastern Kentucky, and, not so much today, but still somewhat. I mean, the coal industry has been a huge part of the local economy. It really has been, for a long time, what brought people to live in this area. And so the majority of families can somehow trace the reason that they are here to the coal industry. So it's a big part of the culture, and it's still an important part of the economy. And so growing up in this place, my grandfather was a coal miner. Coal and the issues around it are important to all of us. And so for me, when I was going to law school and I was trying to think about what's a way that I can use these skills that's meaningful and does something valuable to my neighbors back here in eastern Kentucky, black lung issues really came to the fore. It was a time after the Affordable Care Act when there were some important changes made to black lung law, but there weren't enough lawyers there to help coal miners and their widows who needed that help. So it was an opportunity that I saw. I was able to get a fellowship through someone who would fund people to do public interest work, and so that brought me home from law school in Philadelphia.
And do you think that this issue of pneumoconiosis, black lung disease, is it starting to go away? Is this something that hopefully after enough work, but also changing issues in the industry, the changing nature of our energy economy, do you think that this is going away, or is this something that it's still becoming more of an issue as we go on because so many people have still been working in it? And now with the changes, as you mentioned, in the legal landscape with the Affordable Care Act, now more people can pursue those kinds of claims?
Well, I'm afraid I have bad news on that topic. At the same time that in a lot of ways the legal situation has been getting better, the situation medically has been getting much worse. We're right now in a time when there's been a sharp increase in severe black lung, especially among younger miners, many of whom might have only worked in the coal mines for 10 years, which is a relatively small amount of time, historically speaking. But the way that we've mined coal has changed, and it's a lot worse on miners' lungs. And so we're seeing a lot more black lung in this region now than we used to. At the same time, there is less mining activity going on, but as long as there are people mining coal, and I believe that by any projection, there's going to continue to be some coal mining, even if it's just for steel production, black lung's going to be a problem until we drastically rethink the way that we protect workers and compensate them when they do get the disease.
Taking a step at a broader level of generality, what are some other issues that you see kind of facing Appalachia, whether it's just this region specifically or other rural regions of America?
The first one that comes to mind has to do with healthcare and with the medical industry. Rural hospitals have been having a lot of problems figuring out how to make the bottom line work as insurance reimbursement rates have gotten lower and as many medical expenses have increased. So in states where there has been Medicaid expansion, that's really provided a lot more opportunity both to increase the population's health and also for those in the medical industry to make it. But for example, here in Kentucky, we're seeing some efforts by the current leadership of state government to roll back that expansion. So I have a lot of concerns in this area about what's going to happen with the health industry. And really, that's one of our largest employers now. And so we've had a lot of economic loss related to the shrinking of the coal industry. And if we were to also have the same loss in the health industry, I really think it would put us in a really hard to recover from spot.
Well, that's like one of the biggest issues right now happening in the kind of national conversation. I think in 2018, Democrats, for example, were saying this was the number one issue, and they voted as such in that midterm election. Not to make this political, but it's a conversation that's really affecting the whole country. And excuse me, or correct me if I'm mischaracterizing you, but is it what you're saying that rural areas are potentially going to be massively impacted by whatever policy choices come forward in the next few years?
Yes, certainly. I think the choices that we make nationally with health policy have severe ramifications in rural areas, not only because we have relatively high percentages of people who depend on Medicare and Medicaid, but also because the economics of the hospitals here, they're operating on much thinner margins already. And so when the reimbursement rates are off, or when they're having to serve more uninsured people, it can really make the difference in whether hospitals make it or not. Just recently, there's been a hospital here in Eastern Kentucky that had to file bankruptcy, and it looks like they're just going to shut the doors. There's not going to be a potential buyer or anything. The choices that we make at a national level about health policy very much you see reflected on the streets here.
Well, let's talk about Social Security and Medicaid, since you had brought them up. Almost all of our clients are on some kind of benefits on some level, whether they're getting disability benefits or they're getting supplemental income or something like that. What kind of problems do those clients face that, as public interest attorneys, or specifically as an attorney at AppalReD, do we face on a kind of daily basis? And what are some commonalities we see between clients, whether or not their issue is a custody issue or their issue is a property issue or something else entirely?
Yeah, so a lot of our clients here at Legal Aid, by definition, they are low income or vulnerable people. So it's a subset of the general population. But also here in Eastern Kentucky, we do have a relatively high percentage of people who are on some form of disability or are elderly and on Social Security retirement. And so for the population that we serve, public benefits are very important. What that means is that our clients have a lot of interactions with a variety of state or federal bureaucrats, and the decisions and the mistakes that those people can make a difference in whether or not they can go to the doctor, whether they can pay their rent, whether they can afford the food that they need. And so when errors are made, then we have to try to sort all those out. And you can often get into difficult, complex regulations, dense things that no one in their right mind would want to sit down and read, but we get to help our people with.
I think that's a good place to take a break, and we'll be back in a moment. Don't go away.
As China's role grows greater on the global stage, you want to stay up to date on the issues most pressing to China both domestically and internationally. Check out the Just China podcast for in-depth analysis on recent headlines and investigative reports on Chinese matters that affect our globalized world. We are Just China. Find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your podcast listening.
And we're back. This is UC3P. Again, my name is David Raban. I'm with Evan Smith. He's the Director of Advocacy for AppalReD. I wanted to ask, there's a lot of interns, people like me, who sometimes they come from very urban areas like Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, and they come to somewhere like Eastern Kentucky, and it's completely different from anything they've ever experienced. And I have to just take a tangent for a moment and say it's been wonderful, and I've had an excellent time. But what's it like for the organization to be able to have people come from different backgrounds and to work with clients? Do you find that to be something that's really helpful, or is it a unique type of challenge? Maybe both, something else?
No, it's incredibly helpful. And thank you very much, David, for taking some of your time and spending it with us. And we love hosting, especially law students like you who are brilliant and can bring something to our clients. I really enjoy working with people who are learning about our area because I get to introduce them to a lot of the interesting things that are going there, and often dispel some, kind of misplaced stereotypes that can be there. This is a region that faces a lot of problems, but there's also a lot of commonalities with the problems that people in urban areas or also just different rural areas across